The opulent Starlight Mall glittered like a jewel in the heart of Los Angeles, its gleaming glass facade reflecting the California sun. Inside, marble floors echoed with the click of designer heels and the hushed whispers of exclusive conversations. Chandeliers cast a soft glow over high-end boutiques, their windows displaying items with price tags that could rival a small car. This was a world of luxury, a playground for the wealthy and famous. Amidst the sea of well-dressed shoppers and attentive staff, a lone figure moved with quiet purpose. Robert Downey Jr., Hollywood icon and secret owner of Starlight Mall, had slipped in unnoticed. Dressed in a simple black t-shirt, worn jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, he was a stark contrast to the polished clientele around him. His usually confident stride was measured, his keen eyes taking in every detail behind dark sunglasses. As he walked, Robert felt a growing unease. He had always prided himself on creating spaces where people felt welcome, but something felt off. The air was thick with an invisible tension, a subtle undercurrent of judgment and exclusion. He watched as a well-dressed woman was ushered into a boutique with fawning attention, while a teenager in a hoodie was eyed suspiciously by security. Robert's jaw tightened as he approached a high-end watch store. The gleaming timepieces in the window caught the light, but it was the interaction inside that truly captured his attention. A young man, clearly excited about making his first luxury purchase, was being subtly steered away from the premium displays. The salesperson's smile never wavered, but their eyes held a cold calculation. It was then that Robert knew he had work to do. Lancaster, the impeccably dressed head of operations at Starlight Mall, stood in his top-floor office, surveying his domain. His piercing blue eyes scanned the atrium below, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. Another record-breaking quarter, he mused aloud, turning to face his team of managers. Gentlemen, our strategy is working. We've created an oasis of luxury, a haven for those who truly appreciate the finer things in life. One of the younger managers, a recent hire named Sarah, cleared her throat nervously. Sir, I've been reviewing some customer feedback, and there are concerns about our exclusivity policies. Lancaster's smile faded, his gaze sharpening. Concerns? From whom? Sarah hesitated before continuing. Well, sir, it seems some people feel unwelcome or even discriminated against based on their appearance or perceived wealth. Lancaster's laugh was sharp and dismissive. My dear, that's precisely the point. We're not here to cater to the masses. Starlight Mall is a curated experience for a discerning clientele. Those who feel unwelcome simply don't belong here. He turned back to the window, his tone brooking no further argument. Our job is to maintain standards, not lower them to appease everyone with a complaint. As the meeting dispersed, Sarah lingered, a troubled expression on her face. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong with this approach. Little did she know, an unlikely ally was about to shake the very foundations of Starlight Mall's gilded world. Robert continued his covert exploration of the mall, his actor's instincts on high alert as he observed the subtle dance of inclusion and exclusion playing out around him. He witnessed a security guard brusquely turning away a group of teenagers, their excited chatter silenced by harsh words about loitering. In a high-end restaurant, a family was seated near the kitchen despite the numerous empty tables with better views. Determined to test the waters himself, Robert approached a luxury car display in the central atrium. As he admired a sleek sports car, he overheard a salesman speaking to another customer. This limited edition model is reserved for our VIP clients, the salesman gushed. I'm sure we can find something more suitable for you in our standard range. Robert's eyes narrowed behind his sunglasses. He stepped forward, intentionally adopting a slightly rougher demeanor. Excuse me, Robert said, his voice gruff and accent thickened. I'm interested in this car here. The salesman's smile became strained, his eyes quickly assessing Robert's casual attire. I'm afraid this particular model isn't available for general purchase, sir. Perhaps I could show you some of our more accessible options. The condescension in his tone was palpable, and Robert felt a flare of anger. He was about to reveal his identity when a commotion near the entrance caught his attention. A young woman was arguing with security, her voice rising in frustration. "I have every right to be here. You can't just kick me out because I don't look rich enough for you." Robert moved closer, watching as the security guard grabbed the woman's arm, ready to escort her out. In that moment, Robert made a decision. It was time to stop observing and start acting. Robert strode purposefully towards the unfolding scene, his presence commanding attention even in his understated attire. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice carrying the weight of authority. The security guard hesitated, clearly torn between addressing this new interloper and dealing with the young woman. "Sir, this is a private matter. Please move along," the guard said, his tone clipped. The young woman, her eyes bright with indignation, turned to Robert. "They're trying to kick me out because I don't fit their idea of who belongs here. I'm a paying customer, just like anyone else." Robert nodded, his gaze never leaving the security guard's face. "And what exactly is that idea?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Who decides who belongs and who doesn't?" The guard straightened, puffing out his chest. "We have standards to maintain, sir. It's my job to ensure that Starlight Mall remains an exclusive environment for our high-end clientele." Robert's eyes flashed, a hint of the steel beneath his calm exterior. "And does that job involve judging people based on their appearance, deciding their worth before they even open their wallets?" A small crowd had begun to gather, whispers rippling through the onlookers. The security guard's confidence wavered, sensing he was losing control of the situation. "Look, I don't make the rules. I just enforce them. If you have a problem, take it up with management." Robert's smile was thin and devoid of humor. "Oh, I intend to. But first, I think we need to have a little chat about what true value looks like." Lancaster stood at the railing of the upper level, his eyes narrowed as he observed the growing disturbance below. He quickly dispatched another security team, determined to quash this unseemly display before it could tarnish Starlight Mall's impeccable reputation. As he watched Robert continuing to challenge the guard, a flicker of recognition passed across his face. Could it be? No. Impossible. What would he be doing here, dressed like that? Robert, unaware of Lancaster's scrutiny, pressed on. "Tell me," he said to the guard, his voice carrying clearly through the now hushed atrium. "What exactly makes someone worthy of shopping here? Is it the size of their bank account, the label on their clothes, or is it something more?" The guard shifted uncomfortably, clearly out of his depth. "Sir, I'm just doing my job. If you have concerns, you can file a complaint with customer service." Indeed, the young woman who had initially been targeted spoke up, her voice trembling slightly, but gaining strength. "This isn't just about me. How many people have you turned away? How many dreams have you crushed because someone didn't fit your narrow definition of belonging?" Her words struck a chord, and murmurs of agreement rippled through the growing crowd. Robert nodded approvingly, sensing the tide turning. As the backup security team arrived, pushing through the crowd, Robert made a split-second decision. He removed his sunglasses, revealing his identity to the stunned onlookers. A collective gasp went up. Phones appeared as if by magic, and the whispers grew to an excited buzz. "My name is Robert Downey, Jr.," he announced, his voice ringing out clear and strong. "And I think it's time we had a serious conversation about what Starlight Mall really stands for." Lancaster's face drained of color as he watched Robert Downey Jr. reveal himself to the crowd below. This was a disaster of epic proportions, a PR nightmare that could undo years of careful image cultivation. He barked orders into his phone, summoning his crisis management team. "Get down there and contain this situation immediately," he hissed, his composure cracking. "And someone find out what the hell he's doing here, dressed like that." Meanwhile, Robert had taken center stage in the atrium, the crowd hanging on his every word. "I've spent the day walking among you, observing how this place really operates," he said, his gaze sweeping over the rapt faces. "And I have to say I'm deeply disappointed. This mall may be filled with luxury goods, but it seems to have forgotten the most valuable thing of all, human dignity." Ooh. A ripple of shocked whispers ran through the crowd. Robert continued, his voice gaining intensity. "I've seen people judged, dismissed and excluded based on nothing more than their appearance. I've witnessed staff treating customers differently, depending on how much money they think they have. This isn't luxury, it's elitism at its worst. And it stops now." As Robert spoke, Sarah, the young manager from earlier, pushed her way to the front of the crowd. Her heart raced as she realized this was the moment she had been waiting for, a chance to challenge the toxic culture she had been silently fighting against. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward. "Mr. Downey," she called out, her voice shaky but determined, "I have information that might interest you." All eyes turned to Sarah as she approached Robert, her steps becoming more confident with each passing moment. "My name is Sarah Thompson," she began, her voice growing stronger. "I'm a manager here, and I've been documenting instances of discrimination and unfair treatment for months." She handed Robert a thick folder, her eyes shining with a mix of fear and hope. Robert flipped through the pages, his expression darkening as he absorbed the contents. Employee testimonials, customer complaints, internal memos outlining selective service policies. It was all there in black and white. He looked up, meeting Sarah's gaze. "Thank you for your courage," he said softly, before turning back to address the crowd. "It seems the problem runs deeper than I thought. This isn't just about a few misguided individuals. It's systemic." Lancaster, watching from above, felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. He had always prided himself on running a tight ship, on creating an exclusive environment that catered to the elite. But now, as he saw the shocked and angry faces in the crowd below, he began to realize that his vision of success might have been fatally flawed. As Robert continued to speak, outlining the extent of the discriminatory practices, a low murmur began to build in the crowd. It was a sound of awakening, of long-held frustrations finally finding voice. The Starlight Mall, once a symbol of aspiration, was revealing its tarnished underbelly. And in that moment, everyone knew nothing would ever be the same again. Lancaster, his face a mask of barely contained fury, descended to the atrium floor. He pushed through the crowd, flanked by security guards, determined to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Downey," he said, his voice tight with forced politeness, "I think it's time we took this discussion somewhere more private. We wouldn't want to disrupt our valued customers' shopping experience, would we?" Robert turned to face Lancaster, his eyes hard. "On the contrary," he replied, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed atrium. "I think it's high time we had this conversation out in the open. These people deserve to know the truth about how this place is run." He held up Sarah's folder. "Care to explain these policies, Mr. Lancaster? The ones that dictate who's worthy of respect and who isn't?" Lancaster's composure cracked, his carefully cultivated image of sophisticated authority crumbling under the weight of public scrutiny. "You don't understand," he hissed, leaning in close to Robert. "This is business. We cater to a certain clientele. It's what makes Starlight Mall special." Robert's laugh was sharp and without humor. "Special? Is that what you call discrimination these days?" The crowd pressed closer, phones recording every moment of the confrontation. Lancaster, realizing he was losing control, made a desperate grab for Sarah's folder. "This is private company information," he snarled. But Robert was quicker, pulling the documents out of reach. In that moment, with Lancaster's true nature on full display, the last illusions of Starlight Mall's glittering facade came crashing down. As security struggled to maintain order, Robert's voice cut through the chaos. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called out, his tone commanding attention, What you're witnessing here is the end of an era of exclusion, of judgment, of valuing appearance over character. He turned to face Lancaster, his expression a mix of disappointment and determination. As of this moment, I am exercising my rights as the owner of Starlight Mall. Mr. Lancaster, you're fired. A collective gasp went up from the crowd, followed by a smattering of applause that quickly grew into a thunderous ovation. Lancaster stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief. "You can't do this," he spluttered, but his words were lost in the sea of voices. Robert simply shook his head, a sad smile on his face. "I already have, and it's long overdue." As Lancaster was escorted from the premises, Robert turned his attention to the gathered employees and customers. "I want to hear from all of you," he said, his voice softening. "Your experiences, your ideas, your hopes for what this place could be. Starting today, Starlight Mall is going to live up to its name, a place that shines bright for everyone." The energy in the atrium shifted, fear and tension giving way to excitement and possibility. As people began to share their stories, a new vision for Starlight Mall started to take shape. It was a vision of inclusivity, of genuine luxury, defined not by exclusion, but by how people were treated. And at the center of it all stood Robert Downey Jr., no longer an undercover observer, but a catalyst for change. Lancaster sat in his lavish penthouse, staring out at the city lights, but seeing nothing. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages and missed calls, but he ignored them all. How had it all gone so wrong? He had built Starlight Mall into a beacon of luxury, a place where the elite could shop without rubbing shoulders with the masses. And now, in the span of a single day, it had all come crashing down. As the night wore on, Lancaster found himself replaying the confrontation in the atrium over and over in his mind. The look of disappointment in Robert Downey Jr., his eyes, the shock on the faces of the customers he had always claimed to serve, the relief and hope radiating from the staff members who had finally found their voice. Had he really been so blind? For the first time in years, Lancaster allowed himself to remember why he had gotten into this business in the first place. It wasn't about exclusion or elitism. It was about creating experiences, about making people feel special. Somewhere along the way, he had lost sight of that vision, twisting it into something ugly and discriminatory. As dawn broke over the city, Lancaster made a decision. He picked up his phone, scrolling past the barrage of angry messages until he found the number he was looking for. Taking a deep breath, he pressed call. "Mr. Downey," he said when the line connected, "I think it's time we had a real conversation." Robert sat in what had been Lancaster's office, now a command center for the sweeping changes taking place at Starlight Mall. Sarah, promoted to head of customer relations, was briefing him on the latest developments. "The response has been overwhelming," she reported, her eyes shining with excitement. "We've been flooded with messages of support, and our new inclusivity training program for staff is already showing results." Robert nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "And what about the high-end brands? Any pushback on our new policies?" Sarah shook her head. Surprisingly, no. In fact, several have reached out to express their support. They're seeing this as an opportunity to expand their customer base while maintaining their luxury image. As they discussed the next steps, there was a knock at the door. Lancaster entered, looking markedly different from the polished executive of a few days ago. His designer suit was gone, replaced by casual wear, and his usually perfect hair was slightly disheveled. "Mr. Downey, Ms. Thompson," he said, his voice subdued, "I hope I'm not interrupting." Robert gestured for Lancaster to take a seat, his expression guarded but open. "Not at all," he said. "We were just discussing the changes being implemented." Lancaster nodded, a hint of his old confidence returning. "That's actually why I'm here. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize now how wrong I was. I'd like to help if you'll let me." Sarah raised an eyebrow, skepticism clear on her face. "Help? After everything you've done?" Lancaster winced, but held his ground. I know I have a lot to make up for, but I also know this mall, its operations, better than anyone. I could use that knowledge to help make these changes stick, to really transform Starlight into what it should have been all along. Robert studied Lancaster for a long moment, weighing his words. Finally, he spoke. It won't be easy. You'll be starting from the bottom, working alongside the very people you once looked down on. Are you prepared for that? Lancaster met Robert's gaze, determination in his eyes. I am. It's time I remembered what true value looks like. As Lancaster left to begin his new role as a junior customer service representative, Robert turned to Sarah. Keep a close eye on him, he said, but also give him a chance. Sometimes the most powerful advocates for change are those who've seen the error of their ways firsthand. Weeks passed, and Starlight Mall underwent a transformation that was more than skin deep. Gone were the subtle barriers and unspoken rules that had once divided shoppers. In their place was a warmth that permeated every corner of the mall. Luxury brands stood alongside more accessible stores, creating a diverse shopping experience that catered to all. Robert walked through the atrium, observing the changes with quiet satisfaction. He watched as Lancaster, dressed in the mall's new uniform, patiently helped an elderly couple navigate the directory. The former executive's face showed none of its old contempt, only genuine interest in assisting others. It was a small moment, but it spoke volumes about the shift in culture. Near the food court, a group of teenagers laughed and chatted, their presence no longer seen as a nuisance, but as a vital part of the mall's vibrant atmosphere. A street artist, invited as part of Starlight's new community outreach program, created a mural celebrating diversity and inclusion. The very air seemed lighter, filled with the buzz of genuine human connection. As Robert approached the central fountain, now surrounded by comfortable seating areas where shoppers of all backgrounds mingled freely, he noticed Sarah deep in conversation with a group of employees. Her face glowed with enthusiasm as she outlined new ideas for community events and customer engagement programs. Robert gathered the mall's staff for a final address before stepping back from his hands-on role in the transformation. As he looked out at the sea of faces, diverse, engaged, and united in purpose, he felt a swell of pride. When I first walked into Starlight Mall in disguise, he began, I saw a place that had lost its way. But look at what we've created together. He gestured around the atrium, now bustling with a mix of high-end shoppers and everyday folks, all treated with equal respect and warmth. True luxury isn't about exclusion. It's about making everyone feel valued, no matter who they are or what they can afford. It's about creating experiences that uplift and inspire, and that's exactly what Starlight Mall is doing now. Lancaster stepped forward, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Mr. Downey, on behalf of all of us, thank you. You showed us a better way, a truer definition of success. We won't let you down. The staff erupted in applause, their faces reflecting the genuine change that had taken root in their hearts and minds. As Robert prepared to leave, he took one last look around the transformed space. The Starlight Mall now truly lived up to its name, a beacon of light in a world too often divided by artificial barriers. He smiled, knowing that sometimes the most powerful changes start with the simple act of seeing the world through someone else's eyes.